Hey friends, it's Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous, where we discuss pop culture through the lens of race or gender, and sometimes both. I'm your host, Julia Washington, and on today's show, we are discussing Wreck-It Ralph. Wreck-It Ralph was first released in November of 2012 and stars John C. Reilly, Sarah Silverman, Jack Breyer, and Jane Lynch, just to name a few. But first, let me introduce you to my guest. Eunice Brownlee is back. You may remember her from earlier in the season when she was here to discuss Bed Knobs and Broomsticks. Eunice teaches others the craft of story in her speaking practice and has coached speakers in telling their stories with Women Speak and TEDx Folsom. Her writing has been published in Jennifer Magazine, Motherscope, and Spoken Black Girl, but the list is so much longer than that. She's a world traveler who loves wine, and we're so excited she is back. Welcome back to the show, Eunice.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be back. I had so
too.
much fun last time.
Yes, I am too. And I appreciate you choosing Wreck-It Ralph because my son was 8 when it came out. So like we actually saw it in the movie theater, and watching it again yesterday. I think I watched it yesterday. I was like, oh, I'm having all kinds of nostalgia.
Oh, totally. I think my daughter was 6.
Oh,
and we saw it in the theater, and I remember falling in love with it and then renting it from Redbox.
Mm-hmm.
And then I loaned it to my friend and I never saw it again. And so that was one of my $25 Redbox purchases. Is Redbox even still a thing? I haven't seen one in forever.
That's a great question.
I mean, do people still I still have a DVD player.
I do too. And it's actually a DVD/VHS player.
Oh, yours is older than mine.
Yeah, but I do miss renting DVDs from a store because sometimes it's like, God, you could spend an hour and a half scrolling streamers to find something if you don't know what you're looking for. And I think that was the magic of the movie rental place, because you could walk in, not know what you're looking for. You have a curated, list of things that you could rent from, and that's it. And it was just so nice to only have like 200 choices and easy to walk through, as opposed to like scroll,
R.I.P. Blockbuster.
I know, I'm so sad.
That was such a big part of my Friday night routine, like into my early adulthood.
Same.
That was like when I was married, my ex-husband wanted to be a screenwriter, so the movies were a big part of the things that we did, whether it was going to the movies or renting movies. And so it was always just like showing up, and you would see the wall of new releases, and if you didn't show up at a certain time on Friday, they were all gone, and all of it was a sad empty box that you're just like, wah, wah. But that also exposed us to so many other things we may not have otherwise rented.
Absolutely. I loved making it a Blockbuster night. That was the best way.
Yeah, totally.
And then I discovered partying.
We're not sponsored by Blockbuster, because Blockbuster is no longer a thing.
There's only one left. I think it's Beaverton, Oregon.
It's in Oregon. Yeah.
There was a TV show on Netflix about Blockbuster.
I watched it. It was so cute. I watched it.
Yeah, it was cute.
Anyway. Yeah, but Wreck-It Ralph, oh my gosh. I love this movie for so many reasons. So I'm glad that you're excited that we're going to talk about it.
We're going to talk about all the things. Okay, so we got to get into the Google summary. And you know what? Google's been like doing a good job lately with the summaries. So maybe they hired somebody to go through and revamp summaries. I don't know, but they're actually pretty accurate. This one's pretty accurate. Here we go. Arcade game character Wreck-It Ralph is tired of always being the bad guy and losing to his good guy opponent, Fix-It Felix. Finally, after decades of seeing all the glory go to Felix, Ralph decides to take matters into his own hands. He sets off on a game-hopping trip to prove that he has what it takes to be a hero. However, while on his quest, Ralph accidentally unleashes a deadly enemy that threatens the entire arcade. I mean, that's pretty much the movie. Like,
I think that's accurate, right?
Yeah.
Like they're all scared of getting unplugged, like
yes,
that final death of the video game. That's so sad.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Sonic, for reminding us that if you die outside of your game, you do not regenerate.
Right. I love that in 2012, Sonic's role was basically a PSA. That's all he was for.
Totally. But like, I don't know, there's some profoundness in just that statement, right? Like,
yeah,
if you die outside your game, you do not regenerate. It's like, oh, that's like kind of dark.
Very. So at the time of its release, the Hollywood Reporter had this to say. Although the script is an original by Phil Johnston and Jennifer Lee, with its tortured toy characters facing obsolescence and searching for freedom and meaning, it bears a distinct Pixar DNA signature. Johnston and Lee don't stray too far from the Disney template. However, and although the characters are digital, their emotions are very recognizably human. Since Ralph and Vanellope are both outcasts, their struggles for acceptance are comfortably similar and familiar. Roger Ebert gave this 3 stars, and IndieWire's headline read, Wreck-It Ralph has a great concept, but fails to level up into something unique. You know, whoever wrote that headline was like, I'm so proud of myself. It's so clever.
They're like, I nailed that one.
Okay, so let's get into it. Overall, what is your opinion of this film? I mean,
overall,
you told us, but like, let's get into it.
I kind of did.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a movie that I really, really loved for a lot of reasons. I think as a mom, it was something that was fun and enjoyable. I think I went and saw this movie in the theater with my dad and my daughter.
Cute.
So it was like this little family date, and it was just so much fun. But for me, it was also like that layer of nostalgia, right? Like, I got really sad with Cubert, like hanging out in the terminal, all homeless and shit. Like, oh, poor Cubert. And how like my favorite was when Ralph was like, he was aggravated that Pac-Man was invited to the party and he wasn't, and you know, he's like, whatever. But it was just, I don't know, because there was these layers with, you know, Pac-Man and Cubert and Sonic and all of these like old school video games. Like, obviously Fix-It Felix was fake and made up, but it was this throwback to those old school arcade games. For those of you who are familiar with Denver's famous Casa Bonita, which is a newly reopened I wouldn't say theme park adventure, but it's a Mexican restaurant / arcade / they have cliff divers. It's like an entertainment show. There's a South Park episode that pays homage to Casa Bonita, and unfortunately the pandemic killed Casa Bonita. It is not known for the quality of its food. The food is pretty terrible and there's cockroaches on the wall, but you have to pay the $16 to buy a plate of crappy Mexican food so that you can go see the crappy cliff diver show and hang out in the arcade, which is, they have like a whole level that just has like all these retro arcade games. And so for me, Wreck-It Ralph was a throwback to that. The good news about Casa Bonita is the South Park guys did buy it and they've just reopened, and apparently the food is, that they've hired like actual real chefs. So apparently the food's good now too.
Oh, that's encouraging. Hopefully the cockroaches are gone as well.
I mean, I hope so. They've been rebuilding it for many months.
Wow.
They're only open on the weekends. It's hard to get a reservation. So I'll report back. But it's just like Wreck-It Ralph for me was like that throwback to this blend of like going to the arcade where there's the old retro games that you remember as a kid, but then all of our children are so obsessed with these new games, these like Call of Duty type games, and the first person
shooter,
first person. I'm not like, the last time I owned a video game console, it was an Atari.
Yes.
So that should tell you. But I really love like Centipede, Tetris. I used to play the arcade games, Pac-Man, all the time. So for me, that was like the piece that really, like, it had the I don't know, the heart for me.
Yeah.
But then I fell in love with the characters, because as that summary said is that these characters are pixelated, but they have very real human feelings. Like the fact that it opens with Ralph, like, I don't want to be the bad guy anymore.
Yes, he's at like the freaking villain support group or whatever. Yeah. So cute. You know, it's just like he's having this kind of an existential crisis.
Yeah. And like, why does my life have to be this all the time? Which I feel like as a grown-up, that resonates with so many of us. We've all had that moment of like, why have I been typecast?
Yeah.
Why is it that I'm always showing up in this role? And why is it that everybody thinks that this is who I am?
Right.
And I don't identify with this character anymore.
Yeah. Because 30 years is a long time and you're not the same person you were 30 years ago, you know? And I felt like that was a really good message. I loved how when the arcade closes, like, it's very much like, here's the real world. And then they go into the video game and you see them sort of be video game-esque with the pixelation. And then once they're off screen, they're very much cartoon. Yes. Like, I loved that. I thought that was so clever and cute.
I love that too. But like one of the things I noticed when I was watching the party scene was, even though they were cartoony, stuff was still pixelated. Like you could see how when Ralph showed up to the party and he breaks things, and like the cake frosting gets splattered everywhere, but you could see that it's not like splattered, it's like splattered in the little pixel squares. But it's like reminding you that yes, you're still inside the video game. Right.
Which is so cute. It's so cute. And I love how they can like leave their video game and go to like this like central place. And then there's like this guy there that's like, who are you and why are you trying to go in and out of this video game? Yes. Like
he's totally border security.
Yes. You're just like, but I thought it was so clever too with the way that they introduce like the newer games as well, when Ralph goes into Hero's Duty or whatever it's called, and he's just like, what in the hell is this? I'm scared. And you're just like, oh gosh, like just the evolution of video games that they touch on was really cool too.
Well, and like he goes in with such innocence, right? Of like, I'm gonna go in and get this medal, and then he's like, what the hell did I walk into?
Yeah. No. And not understanding the depths of like, because it is like, there is, what am I trying to say? Here's what I'm trying to say. Like, I feel like when I think about video games from our childhood and earlier, they are really innocent, right? Like my brother had all of the consoles. My cousin even had a Super Nintendo. Yeah, Super Nintendo. That's what it's called. And all of the games were still fairly innocent, right? Like even if like they were like even Duck Hunt, which is like, when you think about it, you're just like, why? But then like compared to Hero's Duty, which I assume is, you know, a throw to Call of Duty, like Call of Duty is like, feels like it's preparing you for real war. Yes. Whereas like in Mario, you're like, oh, I jumped on this thing and I'm dead. Or like,
I'm using this turtle as a weapon.
Yeah. And like that innocence, I think what's great about you pointing out Ralph's innocence is that it really does highlight the evolution of video games over the last 30 years and how like he couldn't wrap his mind around Hero's Duty, and then there are parents now who were video game heads like way back when, can't, like, they struggle if they're not. Some men are still very much into playing video games and they do the FSP stuff all the time, but there is a fraction of people out there who are like, I don't get it. Why would we play these? Like, they're grotesque, yada yada yada. And I feel like they captured that. I don't know if they were intending to capture it, but I feel like I could feel that watching it this time around.
Oh yeah. Well, and then like even the way that Felix gets so enamored with gosh, Jane Lynch's character, I can't even remember the character's name, but like he's like, oh, your face is such high definition. Yes! And he's like, swoon. Yeah. And so like I think that does kind of play an homage to, there are some people that have that innocence of like, I don't understand what's happening, and then there's other people that do have that like deep appreciation and instant connection to these newer games. Yeah, it's an art form for sure. A friend of mine and I were talking about it the other day. She's like, because we were kind of going through the list of things of like being creatives, and we had no idea the types of careers that could exist outside of just screenwriter, actor,
director. Like, it's like we didn't know that you could do like set design. We didn't know that you could be like a video game designer. Like, there's all these things that are still in the creative industry that aren't discussed as being jobs. And it's really hard to sometimes, like, when you live in sort of a community like mine that really isn't that creative. And like, yes, we're not that far from San Francisco, but it is night and day. When you go from the Bay Area to where I live, it is night and day. So when you don't have access to that sort of outlet, you don't realize like, oh, I could do something other than being an actor. Like, that's cool, but it's still a creative industry.
Well, and there's so much more to it. So one of the last things I did in the before times before the world shut down was Pixar had their exhibit that came through at the Museum of Nature and Science here in Denver. And I spent hours in that exhibit because there was so much talking about how, like, when they were filming Finding Nemo, like the reason why the algae kind of sways and flows the way it does is because the designers and the artists actually went on scuba expeditions.
That's cool.
So that they could witness how it actually moves in the real world so that they could replicate that in their computer design.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, I had no idea that like so much goes into literally every little pixel of these movies. And it was just so cool. And like the level of detail that all of this goes into.
Yeah.
Like even thinking about like one of my favorite scenes, or not scenes, but parts of this movie is when he gets into Sugar Rush.
Oh my gosh, yes.
There's all these different kinds of candies, right? But his moment when he realizes that he's got the Mento dropping into the Diet Coke, and it's like who hasn't done that experiment, right? Like I remember watching the Mythbusters episode on it and like why it reacts, and it's only with the peppermint ones. It doesn't work with the other Mentos. But just even like him discovering this thing that all of us know, like that's a pop culture reference that all of us know. And yet he's just like, wow, this is so cool. And then turns out that knowledge is something that ultimately ends up saving the day.
Right. I loved that. You really can feel, it really does feel like the whole movie is like designed by video game nerds from where I sit. Like, I mean, like I said, I grew up playing Mario. That's the one that
at my neighbor's house, not at our house because we didn't have it.
Yeah, and that's the one that when somebody got my son a Wii and we bought Mario, and I was like, that was like the only video game I was willing to play. Like, you can play the other ones on your own, honey. I love you, but no. Like, Mario is where it's at. That's the game I know. That's the game I'm comfortable with. Like,
and that's the same for me now. Like, it's still the only game that I really feel comfortable with, and everybody still makes fun of me because I do this dancing around. I'm like, oh, go to the right, go to the left, while I'm crashing into the wall, and everybody's like, Eunice, you know that doesn't make it. Which is funny because then when I try to play it on Wii, it just doesn't. When the whole console is designed to move with your body, I still can't do it. It's fine.
Right? I know, that's so funny. Fine. So while Ralph doesn't quite feel like he is a true villain or that he even fits in, he makes a new friend when he finds himself in the game Sugar Rush Speedway. That friend is Vanilope, the glitch that everyone in this game is terrified of and wants to stop. Glitches in the video games could lead to getting unplugged and therefore no longer existing, because what we learn in the film is that if you get unplugged, you basically have to go into like the terminal where they all live, and you're essentially become like a homeless video game character.
Okay.
I know Vanilope is an outcast, but so desperately wants to compete in the race and win. So in the IndieWire article I mentioned earlier, the critic commented that they found Vanilope to be annoying, not only to Ralph, but to moviegoers as well. The review also says this, quote, "For all of the effort put into the gimmicky format, Wreck-It Ralph is simply a variation of the same fable Disney has told over and over and over for decades. There is none of the story invention Pixar does at its best. Instead, it's the standard learn to embrace who you are messaging with a dollop of princess magic, in addition to a thoroughly distasteful product placement of Nesquik. Disney should really be ashamed, end quote. So I kind of take some issue with this, with a lot of the reviews I found for Wreck-It Ralph. But the thing that really kind of like has been bothering me since preparing for this and then watching the movie is that, and then the time era too, I didn't find Vanilope. Well, let's start here. How did you find the character of Vanilope? That's specifically what I would like to talk about in reference to this IndieWire review.
Well, that IndieWire review makes me feel like whoever wrote that was probably the fucking popular kid.
Yes.
I'm just saying, because like I actually adore her. I actually dressed up as her and it was probably, I'm not good at costumes. It was probably one of the best costumes I've ever created in my entire life. For a costume party in like 2014, 2015, somewhere in there. So not long after the movie came out. But I feel like I identify with her of feeling like an outcast and like trying so desperately to want to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what I do, everybody's kind of like, yeah, well, we still don't want you here.
Right.
It reminds me of, so my junior year, actually it was the end of my sophomore year, I decided, and this is who I was in high school, super band nerd, super nerdy, honors classes, all the things. And I decided, I don't know why, but I decided I wanted to go out for the cheer squad just to prove to myself that I, this scrawny, awkward, geeky girl, could do it. And I fucking made it. I went to practice every single day for an entire week. I did the tryouts, all these things. And I was like, woohoo. Oh my gosh. And my parents were like, well, that's cute. You did that. Congratulations. Now let's move on. I'm like, no, I made the squad. I am doing this.
Yes.
And it was because I made the squad, one of the other girls who would have been a senior didn't make, and I made varsity squad. So first time trying out for chair, made varsity squad, all the things. I was constantly reminded that I wasn't supposed to be there.
Oh.
And I never felt like I quite fit in. But then there was just this like heated determination that was like, well, you guys aren't going to push me out of this. Like I earned this.
Right.
I ended up not making friends in that process and also losing the friends that I had because they're like, you're a sellout. But it was like, for me, I feel like Vanilope wanting so badly to compete in the race and the way they trashed her car, that very first scene, to keep her from racing. That's how that whole experience felt for me.
Yeah.
And then by the end, like there was this vindictive, like vindicated. Vindicated is the word. Like she's just, they're like, oh my gosh, we're so sorry that you're actually our princess. And I forgot. And it just made me want to punch all those girls in the face.
Yeah. And like, who better to play the mean girl than Mindy Kaling, right? Like she's got the voice for it so perfectly. I didn't find Vanilope to be annoying. Like you, I also kind of related to her in a way. And it was like, it made me think about, okay, so 2012, we were still sort of in the midst of like women bashing in the media and the way that we talked about women and girls in the media.
And Me Too hadn't happened yet.
Me Too hadn't happened yet. Sarah Silverman is polarizing for better or worse. I don't personally know why, but that's maybe because I don't find her to be annoying. I actually
like her.
I enjoy some of her stuff. Like I've enjoyed her in the movies I've seen her in. I thought she was the right voice for Vanilope because there are moments where Vanilope is still very much a child and she has the voice to sort of bring that childlikeness to the character that's needed for an outcast, I thought, who is, a little girl. So it just got me thinking of like, okay, so if this movie was made today, would the reviewer hopefully have grown because it's been 11 years and think and like maybe change their tone? Because now, because like, here's my example. Roger Ebert hated Mean Girls when it first came out. He did not give it a great review.
He hates everything.
He hates everything. But he did go back, watch it again, and then kind of like give himself sort of a retraction article of like, oh, actually, I was wrong. This is a really good movie.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, how can we get more people to do that?
Well, because I really think that sometimes, I mean, I feel like any creative venture, it lands a certain way in a place and time. Like I had drinks with a friend the other night, and we were talking about how one of my favorite movies of all time is Some Like It Hot.
Oh,
and
yeah.
She was asking, like, does it hold up? Because she's never seen it. And I'm like, I actually think this is one of those that does.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's even more relevant in this place and time than it was back when it was first filmed in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
And so
taking place in the 20s.
Taking place in the 20s. Yeah. So I'm just like, I feel like there are movies that are timeless in that way, but then there's other ones that in their place and time, they totally make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, what we have going on for us also affects how we're receiving some of these things. So like, was this reviewer coming off of like a bad experience with some Mean Girls, and maybe it was like, yeah, I can't, I don't think I'm that annoying, but whatever. Like, when Big Magic came out, I totally read it and I hated it, and I'm not sure if I hated it because I love everything else that Liz Gilbert has ever written.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I'm not sure if I hated it because of where I was in the place and time when that book came out.
Yeah.
And so like I've held on to it with the intention to reread it just to see if it's me or if it's the book. And I feel like that's the same with movies, right? Like you might rewatch like that. I feel like I can't think of anything specifically that I've rewatched that I didn't love before and then was like, actually, I changed nothing comes to mind, but I'm sure it's happened.
Yeah. It makes me think of too, like how the Barbie movie, and this is airing obviously well after the Barbie movie's released, but it's relevant still because the opening weekend, there was so much hype. People were going with their girlfriend. I went with my girlfriends, like, and just the hype and the pomp and circumstance of being with your girlfriends and like having a movie that's specifically for you, like, we know that this is, I mean, some people brought children. I do not support children watching this movie until they are 13 years of age or older. That's just my stance.
Yeah, there's some adult themes there.
Yeah. And so like, there's all this hype. So you walk out of the movie because everyone's laughing and crying and cheering together. And you get that collective shared experience of like, oh, we just had this amazing emotional roller coaster together. And it's so amazing and wonderful. And then if you go back again, without all the hype, I saw it 4 times. By the time this movie releases, by the time this movie releases, I might see it more. The last time you and I talked, I had only seen it 3. So like the 4th time I went, it was a more subdued audience. And so I was able to absorb things a little differently this time. Like it wasn't like we were all here for a Rocky Horror Picture Show type of vibe. And there were some things where I was like, okay, I'm going to reflect on that a little bit more because I do have feelings about that and how that landed and all of these things. And then after I saw it the 4th time, I did go into the TikToks and the reels and the reviews because I wanted to not have that influence the way that I took the movie in.
Yeah.
And the discourse has been really interesting, really, really interesting.
It's all over the place.
But it'll be interesting to see in 10 years how this lands, because there are some movies like Thelma and Louise. My friend and I covered that a year ago now, and the consensus was you could drop Thelma and Louise in the movie theater today and nothing feels like it has changed with the way that we are treated by the police, with the way that we are treated when it comes to sexual assault, with the way that we are treated by men. Like,
yeah.
And that movie is 30 plus years old.
Yeah. I mean, even looking at the way that Brad Pitt now, right? Like,
right.
He's a total abuser, and it makes me feel gross to watch anything of his anymore.
Yeah. It's like, please be ugly to make this easier for me.
Right. Well, and it was even like, there's just so much too that gets tainted in Hollywood, right? Because of the bad behavior of specific people. And it just makes me like, there was an article I read, I feel like it was on Medium. I want to say it was after Kevin Spacey and Bill Cosby both got exposed. It was about the same time both of them were exposed. And it came down to like, I grew up watching The Cosby Show, as I'm sure you did.
Of course.
And Kevin Spacey was one of my favorite actors for many, many, many
Oh,
years.
interesting.
And it just taints it, right? Because you're just like, okay, can I still appreciate this art knowing who the person behind this is?
Right.
So like, is some of that, like, I'm tying that whole idea back to Wreck-It Ralph, like, is some of that directed at Sarah Silverman? Because her stand-up comedy is like, it's not for everyone.
Right.
It is totally a take it or leave it. And so if you don't like it, you're not going to like anything that she's doing.
Right.
But can you appreciate her art without appreciating her as an artist?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? It's so interesting with female comedians in general, because we were having this conversation in a group chat that I'm in with a bunch of pop culture junkies, and we were talking about dating, what have you. And like, cause the whole bit in Barbie about like, oh, have you seen The Godfather? And like, just like how that's sort of one of those markers. And then we sort of fell down this rabbit hole of like, yeah, like that's like used as a test by men to see if women have good taste in movies and shit like that. And then it turned into like, oh, are we asking like what female comedians do you enjoy? And never, like, it's a red flag if they're like, oh, the only one I can think of is insert Amy Schumer, insert Sarah Silverman, because there is still this level of like, we don't really find women funny. That still exists in our society. So even though this film was 2012, and I feel like Sarah Silverman was probably at the height of her career in 2012, because there's a ton of movies that
she had her stand-up show back then.
And she was in a ton of movies like in the early 2000s all the way through. I was trying to think of something after 2015 that she was in, and I was like, I'm gonna have to go to IMDb for that. But I don't think they would have picked her to play Vanilope if she wasn't like hot at the time. Because Disney does that. Disney's not like betting on new talent.
Nope. Well, I mean, look at the rest of the cast there.
Yeah.
Right. Like that. Those are all characters, or not characters, but actors who I feel like were like hot and in their heyday.
Yeah.
At that time. And I guess this was probably 2009, 2010 when this project probably first got started before it came out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so interesting how like this reviewer just, it's not interesting. It's the way the world is. They just honed in on Sarah Silverman and refused to see her as Vanilope at all.
Yeah. I mean, like, I thought that like looking at her relationship with Ralph, I thought that the way that she was annoying was endearing, right? She's like this pesky little sister that's just like, oh yeah, you are this big bad scary man with halitosis who just crashed into my game, and you think you're gonna like, and she was just like poking fun at him, and that was a way that their whole entire, like, he was so frustrated by her, but you could tell that he still was endeared, and he was
cares
just like a pesky little sister, which today happens to be my sister's birthday while we're recording this. So like, she was a pesky little sister for so long, and now I really love her now that she's 41 years old. But I digress. But like, you know, there's a peskiness to it, but there's also a persistence. And I feel like this is one of those things that specifically as women, we haven't gotten anywhere without being pesky and persistent.
Right.
And it has annoyed the fuck out of so many people. And they're just like, sit down, little lady, and shut up. But I think that we're finally at this tipping point where we're like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to also get into this idea that IndieWire suggests that this is a princess movie in disguise.
I laughed out loud when I saw that, because did you see Ralph Breaks the Internet?
I haven't seen Ralph Breaks the Internet.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Ralph Breaks the Internet is the sequel to this movie. And there's a whole entire scene where Vanellope crashes into this Disney princess slumber party, and it is fucking hilarious. And she's just like pops in, and she's like, wait, like, blink twice if you're being held captive. But like she crashes into this whole scene, and she's kind of making fun of like you know, I can't believe that you were being held captive by this beast and or this evil witch and or blah 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 blah, because that seems to be the Disney princess storyline, right? Is that she's being held captive by the villain, and then the prince has to come and save her. I guess if you really want to get into it, I could see it. Like, she is being held captive in her glitch, right? So she never gets to see who she really is because Turbo has reprogrammed her to be this like disconnected from the game.
Yeah, because Turbo is the true villain.
Yes. And like the way that they drew that character is creepy.
So creepy. I forgot how creepy looking he was.
It reminds me of some of those what was it, the Magic School Bus? What was the cartoon that was in the 80s and 90s where the kids went into like the submarine and then they went into like your bloodstream?
Yeah, Magic School Bus
stuff. Was that what it was? It reminded me for some reason of that. I don't know why. I don't think that there's any character that's like that in that, but for whatever reason, I'm like, I feel like this Turbo character is somebody that they would have run into on this Magic School Bus adventure inside your veins,
because he's just jumping ship. He's like a arrogant, self-centered, I'm the best. He's basically a white man, and is like I new video games cannot exist because I'm the best video game character in the world, and he like jumps ship to other character video games, and then those games ultimately get shut down, and like that's sort of
is impeding progress. You just gave me like this epiphany of like, he is that person that's like standing on the corner screaming about like, why do we have to have genders now or not genders now? And why do things have to change? Because like, he is that one that's so firmly stuck in the 50s.
Yep.
That any progress, he's like, I'm going to do whatever I can to take it and defeat it, or take it so the rest of you can't enjoy it the way that it was designed.
Because that's the thing. Ralph has that epiphany where he's like, if Vanilope is a glitch, why is she on the side of the game? Because like, you wouldn't be. Like, we all know this from being in arcades. All of the best characters, all of the main characters are what's on the outside of the game. So that way you have that recognition from the other marketing that's happening, right?
Yeah.
So like, Ralph, good for you. And then the other part of it is like Turbo just coming in and stealing power.
Yes.
Like,
he's a freaking colonizer.
Yes, he totally is.
Totally colonized this game. His game gets unplugged, and rather than, you know, panhandling in the console central station, Grand Central Station of the consoles, like Hubert. Oh, I don't know why I'm stuck on Hubert. It's just so sad. Like, that was one of my favorite games when I was a kid. Just the way that he just like refuses to accept that like he doesn't need, like, he's outgrown his time, and that also brings me to a question that came up for me. Was all of these games have this fear of being unplugged, right? Like, that's the worst possible thing that could happen, is that you've basically reached this point of obsolescence. And is that really a legitimate fear? Because like, I feel like as we age, that's a fear that we have, but also like, if you're going to grow and progress, you're going to move with the times, and you're going to change, and you're going to be okay with being replaced by the next generation. Like, we have to come to that acceptance that like, we've bore down future generations, and they are going to replace us someday. We are going to be obsolete.
It's interesting though, because I think our society as a whole doesn't want to do that. I mean, look at how many 80-year-olds are still in power. Not that I want to come off ageist. That's not what I want to, that's not how I'm intending to come off. The most recent thing, and again, this is airing months after we're recording, the Mitch McConnell thing, where he just freezes, and it's like, oh, you very clearly are having a stroke.
Right.
Like, this is not a situation where you should still continue to be in power and maybe find something else to do. Like, some 80-year-olds, because I worked in aging for like 4.5 years, it was really interesting because there were a lot of people who were just like, I just give up. I'm not even going to bother staying up with the times. And you're just like, no, that's how you die faster. Like, you're leaning into becoming obsolete, and then you're mad because you're obsolete.
Yes.
Whereas,
and I feel like that's where these games are.
Yeah. Whereas like the volunteers that I had that were over 60, because we really fostered that idea of like volunteering over 60, they were vibrant. They had busier schedules as retirees than they did as employed people. And they stayed current, whether it was on pop culture, whether it was the news, and, you know, like legitimate, like fair and vetted news.
Yes.
Whether it was movies and music, like it didn't necessarily matter what they stayed current with, but they still kept reading and paying attention to the world. So it wasn't like they were like the 75-year-olds they are so different than the type of 75-year-old my grandparents were, who were literally born in the 19 teens. So like that makes a huge difference too. But I wonder, like, to your question, I wonder how easy it is, because when you were saying that, I was like, God, Nintendo's done a great job. Because it's Nintendo that is Mario, right?
Yep. Yeah. Like Mario's still a thing.
He's still a thing
40 years later.
They have done such a great job at keeping him relevant. I mean, for Christ's sake, the movie just came out this last summer. Mm-hmm. Though I'm annoyed it was Chris Pratt who voiced him. However, like, you wouldn't be able to do an IP movie if that IP wasn't still relevant, right? And Mario is still relevant, and they've done a really good job at keeping it that way.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like Pac-Man's another one of those characters, like tying into the video game piece that continues to have relevance 40, 50 years after its invention.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that that's a perfect example of, these are the senior citizens that are still staying up with what's current and participating in the new society rather than trying to drag it back into what it once was.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that you can't be a functional person at the age of 80. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is recognizing and understanding your strengths at every age.
Yes.
And knowing what you can contribute at every age, and finding the spaces that are willing to bring you in so you can contribute what you have to offer. Because I think so often, and I'm experiencing this now because I'm going through a career pivot, and I feel so often that I'm losing to people who are not quite 20 years my senior, but it will be soon as I get closer to 40, or 20 years my junior. And it will be soon as I get closer to 40. Like this idea of like, oh my gosh, I'm turning 40. So now I'm a protected class, add another level of protected class to my protected classness. And so like I had to make the decision, like, I can't do social media anymore. I'm competing against people who are 25 fresh out of college. I don't want to do that. Like, I can't take an entry level social media position. I could be your manager because of the 20 years of experience that I have managing digital teams, but I cannot be an entry level position. So now I'm like, I'm almost 40. How do I career pivot with all my experience, but then still am like applying for entry level jobs because I'm looking for a new career? And that's the piece, right? Like, there's so many people who would just immediately dismiss that or don't care or whatever, because we are so focused on like, youth is so good. And I'm just like, yeah, but also I was fucking dumb at 22.
Well, and like even that, because the other thing that I was thinking about as I was talking was even just the ageism, as far as specifically as women, the way that we get marketed to, you know, have our younger looking skin. So basically, like, of course, these video games want to stay fresh and relevant, even though they're aging, and they want the upgrades or whatever, because that's what we keep getting told, is that we need to stay young, stay fresh. And I resonate with that career pivot because I'm going through one as well. And I have 20 years of experience. Is it directly relevant to what you're hiring me for? Maybe not, but is it tangentially relevant? Because there's a lot of stuff that we have now that is built on what we once had. And we do have experience in what we once had.
Yeah. And I feel like with every generation, the definition of 40 is changing. Like, my parents are in their 70s. They are so much more active and vibrant than my grandparents ever were at that age. My cousins are in their 50s and 60s. And when I think about my grandparents in that age, or even my parents in that age, it's just every generation is sort of defining what that age means. But yet as a whole, we can't seem to catch up to that. And I do kind of hate some of the, dismiss anti-aging stuff, because then it's like these women who literally look like they're 30 with silver hair, and I'm just like, you're not helping.
Right.
Like, good for you for making the video, but you also look like you're 35 and just have silver hair. Like, I need to see the lined face women. Where are they?
Which is funny. I was at the one of the local water parks did an adults only night last night. And so I was standing in line. It was so much. You know that I've been taking my kid to that water park since she was a little girl. And it's so much more fun when it's just grown-ups and you all have beer. and they had like live music. It was great. But anyway, I was standing in line and I was talking to this woman who was there with a meetup group for 40s, 50s, and 60s. I'm like, oh, I'll have to check that out. And she's like, you're not old enough to do that. I'm like, I'm 44. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I know that I am that person that people don't think that I'm as old as I am.
I mean, same. When I moved my kid into college last year, they're like, which one of you is moving in? It's like,
yes.
Like, I don't look that young, but thank you.
But thank you. Going back to the princess comment though. So one of the things I was thinking about in the shower this morning, because that's where I have my
that's where thoughts. The best thinking happens.
Best thoughts happen in the shower. Was I was thinking about, as a woman in her 40s, which I am, and how we seem to be collectively breaking out of this idea of who we're supposed to be. And so there's the part at the end of the movie when Vanilope realizes that actually she's the princess and she's the one that reigns supreme over Sugar Rush, blah, blah, blah. And she's got her full princess regalia and blah, blah, blah. And then Ralph is kind of like, I don't really know what to do with you. She's like, no, wait, but this is who I am. And she goes back to her candy trash outfit that is super cute, but also like reminds you that she lives in the trash yard. And she's like, no, this is who I am. And so like, there's just this, for me, it hit differently.
Yeah.
Watching it this week compared to when it first came out, of like, she has zero fucks left to give. She's like, I don't care if you like me or not. Like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Bring it. Like, I'm not going to fit into this idea of who you think I should be just because that's how I've been programmed my whole existence.
Yeah.
This is actually who I am. And like, she keeps her glitch.
Yeah.
She embraces that. So like, of course there's the Disney movie theme of like, accept who you are and you're beautiful, whatever. But also they turn her into a princess at the end and she's like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, it's not really my vibe. Yeah, that also hit in a way where I was just like, oh, thank God. Because that princess messaging, our friend of the podcast, Natalie Katona, has a whole episode that features Carly Adams, where they do talk about the princess complex. If listeners haven't tuned into that, I will link it in the show notes. It's really good. Because that princess complex is strong with Disney stuff. It's what they're known for some people, right? Like, that's all we saw for decades, and still sometimes, I mean, they're moving.
I think we still see it. It's just, I feel like it's not as overt as it once was.
And I think maybe Wreck-It Ralph might be the beginning of that transition, because she is sort of saying like, okay, yes, like you said, yes, I was a princess, but no, this is actually more true to who I am. And that I loved, because as I sit here and people are sending me job listings for things that are completely within my wheelhouse, specifically digital media stuff, I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. If I'm going to be starving and hungry because no one's giving me a livable wage, I'm doing that at my own hand.
Yes.
than trying to make a corporate money.
You have no idea how badly I needed to hear that today. That is the boat that I am currently paddling as well.
It took me all of June to get there, Eunice. All of June, I was like applying like a crazy person, revamping my resumes, just doing everything I could. And then towards like, we went on our family trip, our annual family trip to Oregon. And I came back and I was like, you know what? Fuck that. I've been downsized, and I've talked about this a lot already on the show in other episodes, but I've been downsized 3 times since 2016. I can't keep doing that.
No. Well, and I think our generation, we're taking control of our own destinies at this point, because y'all 80-year-olds that are in power keep proving to us that you can't be trusted.
Yeah. And it's so frustrating because then you have the grossness of like the writer's strike. And I think we kind of talked about it a little bit too. And it could be resolved by the time this airs. We don't know. But it's Hopefully. Like all of this sort of gross mentality of like, why do you think you deserve X? And it's like, why do you think you deserve X? Like, that's not the question. The question is what can I be doing to make sure that we have a healthy, thriving society? That's the question.
Well, and I feel like I want to flip that question around of like, what makes you think that I don't deserve it?
Or that,
like, why is it that us wanting a livable wage and to not have to make $150,000 a year just to get by
and to be able to pay our student loans? Like at this point, I got to make $300,000 a year to pay my student loans down.
Yeah, we still have 2 more months before we have to pay those back from the time that this is being recorded. But yeah, but like I've put in the time, I've put in my dues. Why is it that y'all are deciding that this is selfish and greedy and that I'm like, I have become, what's the word? Entitled.
Yeah.
It's like I have paid my dues, society. Thank you.
Yes, because now I'm in this camp, and who knows if I'll still be here when this releases in the fall, but I'm in this camp now where I'm just like, what the fuck does a CEO even do? Like, oh, you're thinking of big picture ideas. Guess what, bitch? I do that too. Like give me a job description of your work so I can understand why you deserve $50 million plus bonuses, which is
right. Well, the rest of everybody is making 35K.
Yeah. Like, come on. Anyway,
that was a tangent.
I know. So you kind of touched a little bit on the themes that resonated with you already. Is there any other theme that you wanted to bring up, or was the accepting? I mean, you know.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I feel like that's a common theme of a Disney movie anyway.
Which is so funny because the Disney CEO doesn't want any of us to believe that.
No, like I don't disagree with the observation that this fits the Disney formula. It just might be a little less overt than some of the other Disney movies. I mean, this really was a movie that was definitely created with all genders and all ages in mind. And so it's just like family fun. There's some nostalgia for the grown-ups, there's some fun stuff for the younger ones. It's just a good, wholesome movie. But yeah, it has its underlying themes, I guess. I suppose also that, you can find love in unlikely places.
That's also true. I don't leave the house, so I'll never find love.
I'm not even looking for it. So
I was saying, JK, I'm not looking for it either.
Like, it's gonna have to come knock on my door and be like,
literally,
hey, I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm here.
The next, I'm convinced they're gonna send a hot HVAC guy one day. I'm like, they're just gonna send a hot single HVAC guy one day because I get service twice a year, right? So I'm like, one of these times it's gonna be the love of my life.
I didn't even think about that possibility.
Just kidding. Yeah, I'm always thinking about stuff like that because I would like to live in a rom-com and be a rom-com, and then that's it. Like, I don't want the after. I don't need to know the after. Just give me the year-long rom-com.
There you go. That of all meet cutes, that's a great one.
Right? Maybe I'll write it this weekend. Eunice, thank you so much for coming back. You are welcome back anytime. This conversation was fantastic.
All over the place, and I love it.
Yes, all over the place, but still we managed to tie it all back to Wreck-It Ralph.
Well, that's how the feminine brain works. It's one of the things that I'm teaching in my storytelling circles right this month. Our whole thing is about the wisdom of feminine circular thinking.
Oh, I love it.
And how we go all over the place, and yet we know how to tie it back. Which
is why we deserve more money and higher positions of power.
Give us the money, give us the job.
I mean, that's the big picture thinking we're actually not getting paid for and should be. Can you please tell our friends at home where they can find you, where they can support your work, where they can keep up with you online, all the fun stuff?
Yes. So since we last spoke, I have launched my Substack where I talk about matters of consequence because all of this stuff is connected, and I've realized that there's that common thread. So you can find that at euniceBrownlee.substack.com. I'm on the IG and Threads, and I guess I still have a Twitter that's now X or whatever account. You won't find me putting stuff up there, but Eunice Brownlee is where you can find me all over the internets.
Friends, I'll link everything in the show notes, so it's really easy for you to find her, and also there's no excuse on why you don't support her. Y'all, I'm so glad Eunice agreed to come back this episode to talk about Wreck-It Ralph. It was such a great conversation. I really enjoy speaking with her, and it made me realize, listening to the playback, doing the edits for this episode, I haven't talked to her in a while. Normally we're in each other's DMs chatting like crazy, but the last few weeks, well, let's just be honest, January, that depression sesh was real. That seasonal depression came in, and everything that I had planned and scheduled for life went out. So check her out on Instagram. She is a gem. She is a joy. I really love talking with her. Y'all, season 5 is almost over. We have a handful of episodes left, and then we have some one-off episodes about some topics that are fun. And then we're going to go into hibernation mode because we're gearing up for a lot of really big things. Can't really share with you what they are yet, but if you're a member on Patreon, we are channeling all of our energy there while we're in the process of getting our public stuff ready. So if you're not a member on Patreon yet, you can go to patreon.com/Julia Washington, and you'll still receive really fun content, not weekly, but you'll get exclusive content and early access to all the big things that we're planning. Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous is written and edited by me, your host, Julia Washington. And if you're new around here, I'm a writer, artist, podcast host. I'm based in California, and when I'm not doing this podcast or facilitating Jelly Pop's book club, I'm hosting reading parties. I'm doing pop-ups, selling my cards and my candles, and I'm wondering why I put myself in the position to be a seller of books, because now that I have that kind of access, I may never leave the house again. I may never produce another episode of Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous or Jelly Pop's book club again. Anyway, friends, as always, thanks for tuning in. It's been a real interesting first quarter of 2024. Lots of amazing things, but also a lot of things where it's like, oh shit, I need to get my priorities in check. It's not cute. Maybe that's relatable. Maybe you're like, this girl, can't with her. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, y'all. Until next time.